All right, Mr. T. Slater, Roosa, how you doing?
Oh, I'm great, man. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm just chowing down on a ham, egg, and cheese. This is my 5 p.m. meal.
Not bad.
Um, so tell us about yourself.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
where to begin with
That's the worst.
that?
That's the worst interview question.
Oof.
I love making people uncomfortable. No.
Yeah, good icebreaker.
So how would you describe your job? What's your title and what do you do?
So right now I guess my official title is called a program specialist, but that's just pretty vague. But pretty much I do half animal care, half education programming for the Sun River Nature Center, which is a nature center in Sun River, Oregon,
Mhm.
which is about 20 minutes drive south of Bend in Central Oregon.
What's the
Uh,
nature center like?
it's pretty small. There's only about four of us that work there full time. Other than that, largely volunteer
Mm.
run. So I do like majority education programming, and I think that's kind of the direction that the nature center's taking.
Hmm.
Where in the past it was more of a like rehabilitation centered, but nowadays it's they're trying to branch into more education stuff. Um,
So it
so
reminds me of this French short, well, not short, but like an hour-long French film I watched recently called Bird Island, where this dude gets like a job working at a bird rehabilitation center, and like
mhm.
he like learns how to take care of the birds, but he's also like rehabilitating himself from like a chronic illness. It's a pretty cool movie. Check it out, Bird Island.
Bird
But
Island.
so when you talk about rehab, that's kind of what it is, right? You take injured animals and try to help like heal them up and release them into the wild again.
Yeah, so release is the end goal
Mm-hmm.
always for that. But in order to be released, you have to meet certain criteria
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to, just release an animal that's not going to survive very long.
Right.
So uh, a lot of the animals that we have at the nature center now are animals that are unreleasable because they don't meet, you
Mm-hmm.
know, certain
Lifers.
criteria. Yeah, they're either blind or can't fly or something like that. I forgot to mention that most of the animals that we deal with are birds of prey, but we
That's what
branch
I was
out
gonna
into
ask.
we branch into songbirds a bit as well. And then we're kind of a triage for anything else. So that being like 24-hour initial care before we
Like
can
for yeah.
transport them to a real vet facility.
It's like emergency care for a wounded animal.
Yeah, like if someone brings us a wounded mammal, like we can't really hold it longer than a day, but we'll provide that middleman service to get them to a rehabber or a vet.
Why does it always seem to be birds of prey that are like in these rehab nature centers? Because there's like your place and then the movie, and then also I'm thinking of in Litchfield White Memorial Nature
Mm-hmm.
Center where they have some
It's a
birds
nice
of
one.
prey that they rehab there. That's the only other one
Mm-hmm.
I really know. So why is it
Yes,
always birds of prey?
good question. Birds of prey, I mean, they live long. So when you put a lot of effort and resources into rehabilitating a raptor, it's more efficient, I guess is the way to put it,
Hmm.
because they are, sexually active longer, can produce more young potentially throughout the rest of their lives because
Hmm.
they just live longer, have more years to do it.
About how
Whereas
long?
Right, and that, and I mean, then again, they're very charismatic. Like a lot of people can identify with them a lot easier.
Hmm.
I think yeah, probably the biggest part of it though is just like the fact that there there are if like there's an injured songbird, you're not necessarily that messing with a population dynamic too much if that songbird doesn't reproduce in the future. But like, like if it's like a golden eagle or something, which we do have a golden eagle in our care. I mean, they've been endangered for a long time under heavy protection. They're losing a golden eagle is more detrimental to the population of golden eagles than losing like a sparrow would be.
Sure.
To the sparrow population, you know.
Yeah. So, birds of prey, raptor, are those interchangeable terms?
Yeah. Anything with talons.
Oh, so
Is
like
basically
like Ellie.
Yeah,
birds of prey are actually pretty rare, right? I mean, like, so here in Connecticut, we see like some red-tailed hawks, but it's like, you know, my mom used to get excited that there was a red-tailed hawk in our neighborhood. And I'd be like, well, there's plenty of them like at the camp where I work at, but by plenty, I mean like 8 maybe in like a large outdoor environment. So don't have a large numbers, I guess, but they're predators. You ever hear the theory that humans kind of relate more easily to predators than herbivores?
I've heard that a bit, yeah.
Like dogs and cats, predators. They say predators have eyes in the front of their head and prey have eyes on the side of their head. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, maybe that's just like a more relatable for us. I don't know if we can just empathize with something that looks a little bit more like us.
Yeah, probably. Okay, so you do a lot of raptor rehab, and what like do you do any medical stuff with them yourself?
Me personally, no. That I didn't go to school for that. But we do have someone there who's our animal care lead. I kind of follow her lead on most of that stuff because most of my background's in, you know, the education aspect of that.
Is she a certified vet or no?
No, but we do have one on call that we can just basically get over there in a couple minutes if we need. But she does have like, you know, medical training with animals. And I mean, she's been working with at least birds of prey for like 12 years.
Gotcha. But, and so you said it's a pretty small facility.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. So we are part of like a larger group where, so there's the nature center, there's the observatory, it's called the Oregon Observatory, and then there's a thrift store where all the profits that are made from that thrift store benefit both the observatory and the nature center. So it could, because it's all a nonprofit organization. So that and that thrift store is called the Second Turn, TERN, like the bird.
I didn't know that was a bird.
Yeah, it doesn't live in Central Oregon, so it doesn't really make sense that we have them. But it's pretty cool. So those 3 buildings are like part of the deal there. I work mainly with the nature center. Sometimes I'll go over and help out at the thrift store if they're like shorthanded or something, or just need help clearing snow.
Yeah.
But
kind of typical non-profit, just a lot of things, different things going on.
Yeah, you gotta be flexible for sure. But yeah, so the observatory is pretty cool. They're the largest publicly accessible telescope collection in the nation.
Oh, a space observatory.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's really impressive. They got like the whole, like, you know, big dome with the giant telescopes up in it. I don't know much about it, but
do you ever get VIP access?
Yeah, they let me check out the stuff all the time. It's pretty cool.
You can just go like sit in there, bring your friends and chill.
Well, not with the last year or so, but they're starting to do more public programs again because you know, the majority of it is outside, and the part that's inside at least has the roof like rolled away and open. So it's like well ventilated. So they're able to have like a lot of people there now again. So maybe I'll start making my way back. But yeah, I usually show up for those nighttime programs.
Sick. So what's the education like? The thing that you've mostly worked in?
Yeah. So it kind of varies with the season, of course. When school's in session, and we're not in a pandemic, probably the majority of my programming is field trips.
Okay.
So lots of different schools and classes will all around Central Oregon will just, take a field trip down to the nature center. They'll spend a good portion of the day there. And I would kind of lead that program with one of my other coworkers where, we would do stuff like nature walks. We would do pond studies because there's a lake that's right next to the nature center, and they go meet all the animals. We like introduce them to one of our owls who we have trained and can fly around, and they can kind of interact closely with. I say it kind of depends. So like which school is coming, because each school signs up for a different type of field trip. So there's like there's a watershed study one. There's a bird of prey one. There's a reptile and amphibian based one.
Do you ever
there's
just go
one
full Steve Irwin on them?
Yeah, that's the idea, right?
The animals.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good practice.
So what, for instance, if somebody signs up for the watershed trip, what are sort of things that you teach the kids?
Geez, it's been over a year now since we've had one because school's been out of session.
Yeah,
but
we're all a little bit rusty.
Yeah, I mean, it's just stuff we'll do, like water sampling, like water quality measurement type stuff, macroinvertebrate testing. We get them all like little waders on, and they'll go out in the water with like kick nets and stuff and see what kind of macroinvertebrates we can pull out.
Like what kind of macroinvertebrates can you pull out? Snails?
Sure, yeah, snails, crayfish, like lots of different insect larvae.
Leeches?
Sure, leeches. We get leeches sometimes.
Those are always fun.
Yeah,
yeah. How do you sample the water? Do you have them test for pH, or what do you test for?
Yeah, just the usual like basic stuff. Most of the kids who come in are
news to me, so tell me about it.
Oh yeah, just like pH, temperature, conductivity, different.
So pH, you'd use like a strip, right? Like one of those pH strips, or no?
Yeah. You just kind of swirl it around and
see what color it turns.
Yeah, there's if you could do that, but we have a multimeter that we can just kind of with like a probe that you can kind of just dunk into the water, and then it's it gives you all of those readings. But there's a whole like little lecture that goes along with it, where they learn what all those things are.
Right, you want them to know the foundation, rather than kids these days just point their smartphone at everything and it tells them what they want to know. You're not always gonna have a calculator in your pocket, Junior. But you
yeah. They're mostly like 5th grade and under, though. We don't really deal with too many kids older than that. So, we don't get super complicated with things. They're only there for a couple hours.
You can't. She'd be like, in the osmotic potential of this. Oh, you lost me. I should have consulted you.
That would lose me too.
I should have consulted you back when I was working at camp, and I would do like science camp. Or I would try to plan science activities for the kids, but like I was kind of just winging it. I didn't have your training, so I'd be like, let's do a nature walk, let's identify leaves, let's measure the pond or something, or let's look for stuff. But I wish we could have done something like measuring the pH and the conductivity and the temperature. That would have been sweet.
Yeah,
that's all good stuff.
I know. Yeah, before. I mean, you know this, but before I was working at the nature center out here, I was working at an outdoor school here in Oregon.
Oh, we're getting.
Oh yeah, I'll leave that for later.
Well, I was gonna say, like, after we talk about what you do now, we would talk about what you did before. So,
I like the continuity.
That's good. we have our roadmap. So yeah, you do a lot of education with young kids. Let's talk a little bit about that, like how it is working with young kids and science, and like the hands-on thing. I think is really cool that like they really benefit from like being able to go out and do stuff, like go out, put on the waders, and they remember that so much better than if it's just in a science class and you're like lecturing at them about the ecosystem or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the sort of education that you guys do is really crucial. Like it kind of provides a really memorable experience for kids.
Yeah, I think I've kind of gravitated towards it because, when I was a kid, that was the kind of
Mhm.
thing that really resonated with me more is
Mhm.
like the field trips we take where we, go on like a nature walk or, basically anything that, you can get
Yeah.
your hands dirty with.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, a lot of kids lose out on that kind of stuff nowadays with, you know, lack of outside experience. You
Sure.
need
I
it.
mean, especially growing up in like a big city or something like that. I'm sure they
Yeah.
do take some field trips here and there, but
Hmm. Yeah,
when
I mean, even in like a town like Bend, which is very much like presents itself as a outdoor recreation haven, like we get kids all the time who are like have never been hiking or like
sure.
never, I mean, never even like worn boots. Like, I don't know, just
Yeah.
there's I think it's necessary to like, yeah, at least get them out a little bit.
So this reminds me of a conversation, and we'll get back to your career path in a second, but just a little
Mhm.
debate I was having with our friend Adam Lawley a few weeks ago. And I think it was him. He said something like, nowadays people have so much more information coming at them than in the past. Like, and he was talking about technology, information technology, and emails and videos and all this stuff that you see on the internet. And I pushed back and I was kind of like, well, it depends on how you define information. Because if you think about a long time ago, people would have a lot more interaction with just the natural world and the environment around them, and so like they would be probably a lot more in touch with that sort of thing, in touch with like the seasons and the weather and the wildlife and the flora and the fauna. So in a way, like that's a different sort of information, right? We don't think of it as information because it's not like numerical, it's not digitized, but one could say that the more time we spend with technology and like digital stuff and like content that people create, the less time and less experience we have with like natural non man-made systems, right? So I guess the short of that would be kind of that, like, I fear that we're getting less in touch with the natural world, and that we're losing a sort of understanding of it if we don't have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, well, that lack of understanding of the natural world's what is going to lead you eventually to collapse, right?
Oof, you went there.
I
So,
think it's necessary. It is absolutely.
so yeah, you're currently working at this nature center and educating wee ones, but before that, you were working at an outdoor school, right? How was your last job?
Yeah. Hmm.
And so, what was that like?
Yeah, it's so fun. It was probably the most fun I ever had on a job.
Hmm.
Um, but it has its own downfalls, but I'll get
Yeah.
into that. But it's so it was this place called Camp Tamarac. It was in
Hmm.
Sisters, Oregon, which is about a 20 minutes drive west of Bend.
Okay.
Bend being where I live now.
Hmm.
Um, and and even then, it was well outside of Sisters. Sisters being this like really tiny town, so it was pretty far out into the woods. It was actually right in the Deschutes National Forest there.
Hmm.
Um, but beautiful site right on a lake, and spring and fall sessions. Were uh, almost every fifth grader in Central Oregon would come to uh, would come out for like a 3 day trip.
Hmm.
And during that time, they would stay overnight in the cabins. They would during the days do field studies that were led by like me and my coworkers, and
Hmm.
in between they would do camp type stuff, archery, canoeing, that
Hmm.
type
Just
stuff. It was warm
recreation.
outs, yeah, swimming,
Huh.
but yeah, always centered around the community aspect of social learning, and then
Hmm.
also environmental learning as well. But then the summer was just a straight up summer camp.
Yeah. No
Basically how we
science.
made enough money to get enough of the like outdoor school programming going, to keep that cost down. So
didn't you tell me that it's a legal requirement, like kids in Oregon have to go to outdoor school?
yeah, it was a bill passed like probably like 5 or 6 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose called Outdoor Ed for All,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty self-explanatory, but
Yeah.
it requires every public school student to have at least one outdoor education experience per year. So we fulfill
So
that
it
for
could
fifth
be
graders.
yeah, it could be
Here.
one day and you do 3 days.
Yeah, it's usually a lot of times it's a couple days.
Uh-huh.
If not, if they're younger kids, it's tough,
Sure.
and those are more daytime ones. But yeah, like pretty much like fifth grade on, they're
Mm-hmm.
more than a couple days. And even then in high school, you can do stuff like volunteer with our organization and
So
help out with a.
you must have gotten a lot of government funding, right, to do the program?
You know, I don't think it was from the government. I think we had a little bit of state
Yeah.
funding,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I guess is government funding, but
That'd be
on
a
the state
bummer if
level.
like the schools themselves
uh,
had to pay for the trip, because schools a lot of times have tight budgets in the first place. So I feel like if the state passes a bill like that, the state should
so
also provide the money to make it happen.
Which the bill did include, a decent amount of funding for
Mm-hmm.
these programs, but there are like just straight up state run outdoor ed places here in Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Where the one I worked at was a private nonprofit one, so
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately schools did have to pay,
Yeah.
but we were able to basically subsidize it by getting private grants, and
Mm-hmm.
then also like doing summer camp where kids pay
Yeah.
much more
Top
than they
dollar.
would
Yeah.
for their couple. Yeah, and then that all that money we make from summer camp just goes into making outdoor school cheap again. So it ended up
Wow.
being like something like 30-40 bucks a kid, um
Wow.
all said and done for like 3 days of stuff.
Yeah. Wow. So like your
So
nonprofit really cared about making this accessible to the kids, I guess. They like didn't really rely on the government. They
yeah
just like went and got the money by any means.
yeah there was a bit of a drought in Central Oregon for it, so they had like a nice little niche they could fall into where like
Mm-hmm.
it was basically if you build it they will come.
Right. What is Central Oregon? Is that like there's like
The
Central,
middle.
Northern? I know,
Yeah,
but like how much? I mean, Oregon's like a
smack in the middle.
square.
Yeah, it's I mean, so we're west or east of the Cascade Mountain Range. So like if you're familiar, like Portland
That
and
means nothing to
Salem,
me. I
that's
don't know
like
why I
the
asked.
that's like the mountain range that goes through like Washington and Oregon,
Okay.
like vertically, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the west side
On the
is like
border. Yeah.
Portland and Salem and Eugene, like all the big cities.
Mm.
And then if you go east, there's not much happening out on the east side. It becomes a desert.
Oh.
So I live
Yeah.
like seriously, it's like the geometric center of the state.
Nice.
But yeah, it just includes like this whole region, the
So
surrounding towns.
how was your work at the outdoor school, your like education program? How is it different from your current one? What sort of lessons would you teach at the outdoor school?
They're honestly relatively similar in that
Mm.
I've been taking the same approach to them.
Yeah.
But the topics are different. So like when I was at outdoor school, we would do like fire ecology, a lot of stuff on like decomposition because the area that the camp was in had seen a wildfire there just
Mm-hmm.
a few years before I started working there. So
Mm-hmm.
we had like a lot of like resources to work with
Yeah.
for those things. And then
Thanks to Smokey the Bear.
Yeah, so we don't I don't really do ones like that at the nature center anymore, but we had like watershed ones that
Yeah.
we would run and push the same sort of ideas.
Push your ideologies onto the kid. Our
Mm-hmm.
radical conservation ideology.
Yeah, don't ruin our lake.
I
We
want
want to
to
swim.
share a quick joke that came up in our Quiplash a couple weeks ago. The question was, what does Smokey the Bear do when he's not fighting forest fires? And the answer was, he starts forest fires for job security.
For job security, yeah.
um,
Makes sense, man.
yeah, but so um, how much curriculum planning did you have to do when you started working at the outdoor school? Did you have somebody who was already established that kind of showed you the ropes on like how to teach lessons and what to teach? Because this has been like something I struggled with doing, like kind of science camp and stuff, is like, oh, I got to teach kids about science. Where do I start? So how did you start? Like, how did you start teaching kids about science?
Yeah, this was kind of a interesting one because like you could ask my mom this too. When I was like younger, my mother would always like tell me, you can be a teacher. Like she would always say like, oh, you'd be
Mm-hmm.
so good at teaching, and I'd always say like, oh no, like that sounds horrible. I don't ever want to do that. And like towards the end of college, I was working with my like mentor professor. He hired me to be on his research team,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we became close through that. And then he eventually asked me to help out on a few labs that he ran, um, because he needed someone who could, one, run the boat that we were
Mm-hmm.
using, and then two, teach the like freshman and sophomore students in this lab
Mm-hmm.
how to do like the different field work that we do out on the boat. So
Mm-hmm. So you taught
um,
like
that was
your
probably the
research
first time.
assistants.
Yeah, and that was the first time I like really had a brush with educating at all, and like
Mm-hmm.
that was just, I mean, it was really easy because you're in a boat and people are pretty engaged,
Mm-hmm.
regardless. But I enjoyed it. Like I had a great time. Came
Mm-hmm.
back, and then, but when I started at the outdoor school, I'm fresh out of college. Like I didn't have much education experience.
Right.
But yeah, they had a few of the folks there where one had been a teacher, like a school teacher in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and my boss was just an excellent, amazing educator as well, and
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot to draw from for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Number one thing that helped me was just observing, like just
Right.
taking the time to go out on their field studies when I wasn't running one myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah. Did they
taking
train
notes,
you like?
participating. Like, what was that?
Did you have a training period where you like kind of just
Yeah,
watched them at first? Okay.
yeah. There was a training period, about a week. Wasn't very long.
Mm-hmm.
But that one, the training was more just kind of like getting you ready for the all around experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, I kind of had to like fall in to my own thing to figure out the curriculum and whatnot, the more like actual
Were you
specifics.
were you partnered with like a more experienced educator to start, or no?
Uh, no, but I definitely like latched on to a couple of my coworkers who I thought were
Mm-hmm.
really good educators. I mean, one of them, is now a PE teacher,
Mm-hmm.
who had his master's at the time,
Mm-hmm.
in education. So just picking their brain.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend Erica, she's an amazing fourth grade teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Huge resource there. Ask her
Yeah.
tons of
Right.
questions. That
Yeah.
definitely helped out a lot. But yeah, man, observing, just watching, seeing
Yeah.
what works, what doesn't.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it feels like I'm laboring this point too much, but I think like how we train educators is a really interesting question to me.
Hmm.
I've worked in education, so I first started at summer camps and then worked as a substitute teacher. in Waterbury. And funny thing is, there's no training to be a substitute teacher. They literally give you like a packet of like useful tips, and like the tips, if like the tips aren't even that useful at all. So it's like,
And good luck.
yeah, they're like, good luck. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so well, what do you think is gonna happen when you throw somebody in with no training? But then on the flip side,
Yeah.
to be like an actual licensed teacher in a state like Connecticut requires you to do a lot of internship and like have a bachelor's degree or a master's in education to be
Hmm.
certified. And I've often felt like there would be a better way, because people talk about the lack of representation of people of color in education, right? There's just like a huge scarcity of black and brown teachers across the country. And I really
Hmm.
think the cost is probably quite prohibitive, the cost of like going to college and majoring in education. And so I've often wondered, can we do more on the job training of educators? Like, you learned how to educate basically on the job. It works, similarly at like summer camps and stuff. And I realize it's probably harder to teach like a real rigorous biology curriculum in the classroom, but in other ways it's not really harder, right? So it's kind of a thought that I've had, is like, can we try to get more teachers in, more representation of teachers by doing
Yeah.
more like on the job training, where say, okay, your first year you work as kind of an intern and you're learning, or an apprentice, right? And you're learning from mentor teachers. And then after that, you get your own classroom, as opposed to the current system where you go, have to pay for college, get certified, and then get your own classroom. You know what I mean? Instead of making people pay for their own training.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that definitely would open up the door for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to make the distinction that like what I do is infinitely easier than being a school teacher.
Do you think so?
um, I think so. Yeah, I think that like I interact with these kids at most for a couple days, and don't make a huge impression. Like school
Mm-hmm.
teachers, like you have a lot more on your plate. You're not only an educator, you're a mentor, you're a role model. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
and like you could say that about my job too, but like not nearly to the degree that a teacher would. I just think
Fair.
that there's a lot more that you need to know in order to be a full-time classroom teacher than
Mm-hmm.
like if you were to just lead outdoor education field trips.
Yeah. Sense a lot of respect for your SO on that. Good
I
point.
just yeah, dude, a lot of respect just for teachers in general. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, with the fact that like I have even just like a foot in the door to be able to see what it is that they do,
Mm-hmm.
I don't envy that amount of work
I mean, plus
and
plus
responsibility.
having to do it in the artificial and claustrophobic setting of a school building, I think makes it that much harder. I think, teaching in the
Right.
great outdoors, there's just something about it that's more conducive, makes it feel more relaxed.
Right. Well, just the fact that it's outdoors makes it, so much more engaging for the kids
Yeah.
because, most majority of them are stoked to just be out of school for the day and like hiking
Mm-hmm.
around and looking at cool animals and like so I don't need any like child management skills.
Right.
Like they pretty much will do whatever, I'm
Right.
telling them because they're just stoked to be there. So like yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a lot easier.
That's another reason why I really support Oregon's outdoor education policies, because like
Mm,
the kids learn so much by just being in that environment. And like,
right?
yeah, the classroom, they're in the same like four walls every day, and they're learning about things like abstractly, like numbers, or they'll take a science lesson. Oh, here's a picture of an insect or whatever. But it's
Mm,
so much different to go and see it for yourself in
yeah.
a wilderness.
Well, I just think all the time, like, imagine like if we had that when we were kids, dude. Like, I would have loved
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'm really grateful in retrospect that I went to summer camp every summer since I was like
True.
7. And like
Mm,
mostly my parents did it so I wasn't, well, because it was childcare, because they needed somebody to watch me. But like,
fair. Yeah.
compared with people who didn't, I was no Boy Scout, but compared to people who didn't, it's like I gained much more of like a working knowledge and appreciation of the woods and stuff. But
Yeah.
I want to ask, so next segment, uh I wanted to ask you about your college experience. So you kind of fell like from college. You mentioned that you were doing like biology research, and then you kind of got a job in outdoor education, and you've been working in that ever since, right?
Mhm.
But why don't you just talk about like your kind of college experience, starting kind of more toward the beginning when you went into college, and like what you were thinking about and what it was like.
Yeah. Um, so I went to Salve Regina
Mm-hmm.
University for in Newport, Rhode Island.
Right.
Small school, liberal arts. You know, majority non-science folks.
Yeah. So
Majors.
could you get a BS there, or is it just BA?
You could get a BS, and
Okay.
that ended up being what I went for.
Mm-hmm.
But so I went in as a biology major to begin. Was pretty fuzzy on like what direction I wanted to take it.
Yeah.
Was tossing around medicine, was tossing around, the environmental was always in the back of my head too. But
But you pursued biology from the time you first got to college.
yeah, yeah,
What?
but
Why?
just in general, honestly, man, just had a good time at AP Bio
Hmm.
with you were in that class.
Hey,
But
look what I have. Look what I have here. Dun
oh,
dun.
there she is.
Mine says biology. I
There's
still
a
refer
book.
to this.
There's a bookshelf on the other side of this wall, and mine's on that.
Yeah, I still defer to this. This is the greatest textbook of all time. It weighs like 10
Extra primo
pounds.
good. I've only kept two. I've only kept two of my textbooks since like high school and college, and it's that one and then my ecology textbook. But like that one's
Hmm.
really good.
I feel
But
like it just has everything. Like it has a
yeah.
good foundation on every topic in biology, from like cellular to anatomy to ecology and genetics, like everything.
Mhm. Yeah, so yeah, just from like that like good time in AP Bio, I ended up
Hmm.
doing well enough on my test to like um to skip Gen Bio, so that was
Hmm.
also like pretty attractive to me to just get some free credits.
Okay.
Um,
So was that a
but
year long or a semester long course you skipped?
semester.
Okay. And
Um,
that covers small and big bio?
just yeah, Gen Bio 101,
Okay.
and then I jumped in at 102.
So I just
But
want to compare and contrast my college experience a bit, where I went to a liberal arts school too, and also had AP credit from AP Bio, but
mm,
they had like Bio 1 first semester is small bio, Bio 2 second semester is big bio. So it's like an introductory to like cell and molecular bio versus an introductory to ecology and what else is big bio? Ecology, anatomy, and stuff like that. So
yeah.
you, with AP credit, you could skip either one. So I
Uh,
decided to skip the small
oh.
bio. So I skipped first semester bio and took it second semester, which was a lot easier. I think that course was, and
Huh.
really fun. But I also, in hindsight, kind of regretted it, because I kind of, even though we studied so much like cell and molecular stuff in AP, I felt like I kind of it got rusty like toward the end of my 4 years.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. Like that was, I think, I don't know, that was like that class prepared me so well for at
Mm.
least the first 2 years of bio,
Mm-hmm.
just because I felt like I had seen everything already because of it.
So what were some of
Um,
the other courses you took? Bio courses or
yeah.
other?
So,
Yeah.
I that Gen Bio that I eventually did take in my second semester was taught by my who would be my mentor, this guy,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Chase. Um, and I really enjoyed his class. Like, just liked taking it. Just looked, basically kept my eye out like on the next couple years. Any class he
Mm-hmm.
was teaching, I would jump in and try to do it if I could. Um, and we had ended up just getting a relationship. I had a different advisor at that point. I moved over to having him as my advisor, and I think that was kind of what cemented me in the path of wanting to go, like, at least into the environmental side. I think originally I had thought I wanted to go more the research route, and then I still kind of think
Mm-hmm.
I want to go that way, but
We'll get there.
yeah, but yeah, he,
So
he was he was kind of the one that set me on that.
So what other classes did you take as part of your bio major?
Like some of my like favorites were like just conservation biology. I took a marine biology course that was really
Hmm.
fun. Um, general ecology. But then I did a lot of like micro stuff too. Like I ended up with a chemistry minor, but I had
Huh.
took both organic chem 1 and 2,
Yeah.
uh, environmental chem, general chemistry one
Huh.
and two for those
Physical
as
chemistry,
well. Biochemistry. I did
biochemistry.
biochem instead of physical,
Yeah,
but
so I think that's what you need 5 classes for chem minor. So it's like general chem 1 and 2,
remember.
organic 1 and 2, and then bio. I think that's like kind of standard. So part of the thing with
Yeah.
this podcast is I try to lay out some of the details of like college for people who are maybe considering college or thinking about a major. So like
Hmm.
there's information that I think could be useful to people. Like what is a chem minor like? I think it's generally like 5 classes. I didn't. I only took
I think so.
I took Gen Chem and Orgo 1, so 2 chemistry classes. So you must be pretty solid in chemistry, no?
I was.
Yeah. And then you took did you take cell biology, molecular biology?
I took molecular, but not
Okay.
cell. Oh, sorry. I
They
did
tend
take
to go
cell.
together, right? Cell and
I
molecular.
I
Sometimes it's a single class.
sorry, yeah. No, I did take cell. They were different classes, but I took those both.
Did you take a class on evolution,
Nope.
anatomy,
Nope.
genetics?
Yes.
So yeah, those are like all the classes I can think of that form kind of the different areas of a biology. So biology, it's like it's a very broad discipline, right? So it kind of
Yeah.
covers there's like cell bio, genetics, evolution, anatomy and physiology,
Hmm.
ecology. I think those are
Yeah.
probably the 5 big areas of
There
biology.
were I did take a few classes that were just kind of shots in the dark
Hmm.
in the biology field that I wasn't necessarily super interested in, but
Yeah.
they just somehow worked with my schedule or whatever happened that made me take them. But like I took like a biology of cancer class, which was
Hmm.
really way more interesting than I thought it was. Also like horrifying. I would just walk out of that class every day just scared shitless. But just like stuff like that, or like I took a developmental biology class as well. That was
Hmm. Yeah, that's another
really
one.
none of the information I wanted, but it was one of those kind of, I don't know, like looking at a car wreck thing. It's like horrible, but you can't look away. I
So
don't. It was really interesting, but I wasn't necessarily into it.
developmental bio, is that like how organisms develop like during gestation?
It was mostly human, yeah. So like
Yeah.
just like every step of pregnancy and
Yeah,
development of
seeing a
the
lot of
fetus and
fetuses and
embryos.
stuff. Oh, I just taught a lesson today to a kid about like the placenta, and we were looking at.
Nice.
I was like, "Here's some pictures of the placenta." I know, gross, but
Yuck.
but yeah, I mean,
Sweet.
Evo Devo is a common approach in biology, right? Look at the evolution of a species and also the development. So in the womb or in the egg, depending on the species. And then there's also the distinction between like small bio, big bio, right? So small bio tends to be focusing on the cell, what happens in the cell, tiny molecules, DNA, RNA, which is kind of what our friend Sam does, who I interviewed earlier. And
Yeah.
you decided to go more toward the big bio path, even though you took pretty much all the small bio courses that anybody else would take. So,
Right.
and you said you did that basically because you really enjoyed those classes that were taught by Dr. Chase, right? And he specialized in like that sort of ecology.
He was, yeah, my big bio classes,
Yeah. Is that
if you
is
put it
that
that
like a
way.
false distinction between small bio and big bio? Like do you still use like chemistry and cells and DNA in your work or no? Well, not your work now, but like if you're doing like ecology research,
Yeah.
say.
Oh, I think having that baseline is really helpful for
Mhm.
sure. But yeah, I think having the baseline's helpful, but I can't say I use it all that often.
Yeah. Um what was some of the most interesting facts you learned as a biology major? This might be a stretch to just cold call you on this one, but like, do you think of any like really interesting things you learned in your college bio studies?
Like just about
Biology.
anything, or just
Some
like
of your,
about
so one of your favorite facts you told me is the Andean vulture. Is that what it's called?
condor.
Condor
Yeah,
is like
big
one of the
boys.
biggest birds in the world, tied with the albatross or something. Well, flight birds, right? So not including
Well,
like
yeah, it's like one of the largest birds who can, soar.
yeah. So that was a cool fact.
Hmm.
What are some of your other favorite species?
Ooh. Well, going to school in Rhode Island, I, you know, learned a lot about Rhode Island wildlife, and I liked, we would when we would trap and stuff, we would get like mantis shrimp. They were always like really crazy. I
Are
don't know
those
if
the
you ever.
ones that can like flick really hard and like
Yeah,
break the
they're
sound barrier?
yeah, like fishermen call them thumb splitters because
Mm.
yeah, if you pick them up, they can pretty much like punch their arms through your hand,
Oh my
no
god.
problem. So you don't want to pick them up without gloves, of course. But they
How?
just can do amazing things. They can see all the way from ultraviolet to infrared. Like they can
Huh.
they have like jet propulsion systems in their body,
So
so they can
with
like
their
shoot
normal
off at like super
with
fast speeds.
so with their normal eyes, they can see ultraviolet and infrared, or do they have separate organs for that?
No, it's all in their eyes. Their eyes are like some of the most complicated eyes of any animal.
Are they simple eyes or complex eyes?
Complex.
So
On a
meaning
shrimp.
they have like they're like little tubes put together, right? As
Right, yeah,
opposed to
like it's
our eyes which have one lens, so they're simple.
yeah, theirs are like, kind of like how like bees and flies where yeah, it's like hundreds of
Mm-hmm.
lenses, like
And so
small ones.
I wonder what that's like to see infrared and ultraviolet. This is something I think about a lot regarding
Yeah.
like our human
Hmm.
perceptual abilities versus other animals, and like also like how that relates to like knowledge, right? Like how is our ability to know stuff limited by our ability to perceive? Like we know infrared and ultraviolet exist, but could there be other things that the mantis shrimp sees that we don't even know exist?
That we can't even measure, yeah.
Yeah, because like how did
Who knows?
people didn't know about UV or IR radiation for the longest time, right?
Hmm.
Do you think there's a
Yeah.
species that can see X-rays?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
this is
I
this
feel
is
like no.
this is philosopher Dan starting to come out.
I feel like no, but I could be wrong. That's me shooting in the dark.
I mean, probably not. There are species that can sense electric fields, right? Sharks can do this. Hammerhead
Hmm.
sharks can sense electric, and like they say birds too. They can
Birds they're
navigate.
pointing, yeah, more to like, yeah, I guess they're the same force, but magnetic fields.
Yeah, they can directly sense
Hmm.
it. There's even some research on that suggests humans might be able to do this, where they literally
Hmm.
like blindfold people in a chair and like put magnets around them and try to figure out if they can find the magnet.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a lot that points to like bird migration tying into, you know, some sort of sense to be able to perceive magnetism, but
Yeah, because that's
never
how
really been proven.
navigate. I think it has. I think it has been proven. And there's even theories about like where the organ is. They think it's either in the beak or in like the pineal gland, perhaps. Something like that. Um okay. What would you say is one of the most unusual aspects of your job?
Hmm. I mean, probably the most unusual is just like preparing the like food for all the animals that we have.
Oh.
Just because when I like pictured this job as like an educator slash kind of animal care, I didn't. We do a lot of like gutting of rodents and
Mm.
small birds to feed the raptors. So
This was also a prominent part in that movie that I watched, Bird Island. There is a lot of
Everyday
dealing with
man.
rats and mice, killing them, and
Yep.
also a
Well,
lot of
yeah.
scenes of doing surgery on the birds, which was disgusting.
Ugh. Yeah, we don't do any surgery.
Yeah.
But we also don't kill any of the mice or rats or whatever we feed. They arrive to us already dead, so that's good.
Oh, no, they had to kill it. Just
Mhm.
professional mouse
I don't know.
killing.
I don't know if I could do it, man. I've never been one to be able to do that.
So the
It,
bit, yeah.
but it's kind of weird how it's become part of my like daily routine where like I'll like walk in, I'll get like, everything, I'll get settled in, I'll clean up
Mhm.
after the birds, like pick up all the poops from overnight or whatever, and
The pellets.
um, pellets too. We'll
Yeah.
check on those. But yeah, that's like then you just come back in and you gut and dice up, 50 mice and a couple rats or like,
They can't eat them themselves. Why do they? Oh, is it because they're injured? Is that why you have to cut them up for them?
So we will leave them whole if we're just feeding them, but a lot of times we use the food as motivators to teach them
Oh.
training or to train them stuff to do stuff. So like right now we have two birds that are not injured, but have been raised in human care and
Hmm.
imprinted on humans. So they're unreleasable because of that.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so we have two birds that are a Swainson's hawk and a Eurasian eagle owl. Um,
Wow.
those two are uninjured, and we could do training stuff with them, and we'll cut up small bits because you want them to be like, boom, go do something, here's a little food, boom, do
Right.
something, here's a little. You don't want them to get like a big mouse and sit there taking
No,
an hour to
yeah,
pick it
yeah.
apart.
You don't want them to be too satisfied. They gotta
Right.
be wanting more.
It's all about motivation. Yeah.
So I was watching Always Sunny in Philadelphia yesterday, and they trained Charlie with beef jerky to work in a sweatshop to make dresses.
Yes. It's beautiful. That's a beautiful show.
um, Speaking of imprinting, you ever hear the story of the chimps that they tried to teach human language and like raise them in human houses? And one of them, like, they didn't get very far with the language, but the chimp got addicted to, not addicted, but like would watch human porn and like masturbate to it, and so that the chimp like
I
was
knew this
attracted
part.
to humans, yeah, and thought it was human, and they ended up
Hmm.
like releasing it into the wild anyway, even though it grew up in with human captivity its whole life, this is on This American Life. They did an episode about it, and
It's
then they
probably a
go
bad
back.
move.
I think the ape was fine. I think the chimp was fine. They went back and met it. It was on like an island of chimps. I don't know, man. It was a really weird story. They
Yeah.
released it onto an island of chimps, and everything was fine.
Dang.
All right. What other questions? So we want to talk about what you want to do for your future career. So what's your career goal right now?
So right now, um, with the pandemic and everything, I had a lot of extra time on my hands. I was kind of getting the ball rolling towards grad school.
Mm,
I think I'd like to eventually do that. Um,
okay.
I don't necessarily know how soon I can make that happen, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm kind of in the boat where like, if grad school happens, great. If I end up, getting a job that I really like and can see myself staying with for a long time, in a place that I can stay in for a long time, then I would take that too. So like I
Mm,
approaching it with an open mind, but I think I would like to kind of move away from education and move back towards research and yeah, just research in general. I've
yeah.
living, land in an area where there's no ocean. I come to miss the coast and the ocean. So I think my if I go to grad school, I'd probably look into something with like coastal ecology, and then kind of see where it goes from there.
You ever see The Life Aquatic, starring
Yeah.
Bill Murray?
Yeah, I love that movie, dude.
Hilarious movie. He's like a Jacques
My
Cousteau based character, but he's also just like totally irresponsible and off his rocker.
big spoof on Jacques Cousteau, yeah.
Yeah, and he'll just go around and like shoot wildlife and blow stuff up with dynamite. And he has this crew of like bossa nova singer who are just like this professional bossa nova singer. And then
highly recommend, man.
Who's the crazy German dude, that famous actor?
I forget his name.
Played the Green Goblin, William Dafoe.
Oh, Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe is like this random like German dude who has a total like complex where he wants Bill Murray to be his father because he never had one. But meanwhile, Owen Wilson is Bill Murray's actual biological son. Maybe like they don't really know. It's just, I love Wes Anderson movies, man. There's so much going on, and I feel like really funny, but also like touching or like serious at the same time.
Yeah, my dad's the biggest Bill Murray fan on the planet, and
Bill Murray I like, but Wes Anderson is my guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just growing up, I was just like force-fed Bill Murray movies. I could recite a bunch of them for you, but that was a good one. Yeah.
So if you do go to grad school for coastal ecology, how would that be different from an undergrad biology track? Like, how's your biology grad school? What would that look like?
Yeah, it'd be much more specialized, hopefully. It would, like, whereas, like when I was doing that just general biology degree in undergrad, you heard all the classes I took, they're all over the place. And I think these ones would be more centered into like basically, human interactions with the coast and how that affects the, ecosystems around there. And, I think that with a research-based degree, I think what's most attractive about that is like having another like a mentor professor through that too. I had a really good experience with my last mentor, and he helped me out a ton. And I think that kind of relationship's really important. So that's what kind of drew me to that research side.
This has come up in my interviews with other people, that in all sorts of graduate school, medical school, PhD, the mentor is really important. You learn a lot from a single individual. So
absolutely.
Are you thinking more of a master's or a PhD?
Master's.
You don't know. Masters.
I don't. Yeah, one step at a time for me.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if I would want to go as far as a PhD.
What do you think of the potential or lack thereof for like ecology research to really change human behavior? Because I feel like there's kind of a disconnect where it's like there's a lot of people do research on like how ecosystems are affected by human behavior, and then people just kind of keep polluting, and governments like don't make a ton of legislation to prevent it. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I mean, I think understanding ecology is the key to saving the planet at this point. Just reversing, well, not reversing climate change, but at least mediating it at this point. I think that it gets swept under the rug a lot because there's way too many politicians these days that are, not listening to scientists. So if that ever picks up in Congress, and even with some Democrats and Republicans, both sides just need to listen more. It shouldn't be a
partisan issue. No.
I think advisory boards to high-ranking government officials should always have someone who's well versed in the sciences.
Absolutely,
it's imperative at this point. I mean, it shouldn't be a science versus discussion anymore, and that's what it always comes down to. It's always like you turn on the news and it's Bill Nye versus this guy who tells Bill Nye he's wrong. Like we need like a more equal representation of what that looks like. You know, I always like think back of it was you ever watched Last Week Tonight with John Oliver? He did like a bit, I forget what, I think it was the end of 2016, if I'm not mistaken. But he basically, at the end of one of his shows, tried to accurately display what the climate change argument looks like, or and it ended up, you know, him the whole time talking about, you know, how it's always like two people, like one for science, one against science, talking it out. And he brought in 97 angry scientists and then 3 other scientists who were, you know, against climate change, because 97% of scientists agree that, you know, climate change is real and human caused. And it was just a really funny visual, because you see, you know, so many people against so few people, because that's what it actually is. But in our government, that's not how it's represented.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of people don't want to even get informed. It's like they kind of are deluding themselves, not just on climate change, but on a lot of issues. Like they don't want to actually get informed because I think they kind of know they're wrong. Give an example. I was talking with somebody today in the news. They're talking about how some 6 Dr. Seuss books are going to be pulled from publishing because they have like some racist stuff in there. And, I was talking with somebody, and this person said, Dr. Seuss, how can that be racist? They're like made up like cartoon characters. They're not real people. And I said,
Bondoozles and Confookles.
Yeah. And I was like, well, have you actually looked into it though? Like what these books have? And like it turns out that these particular books do have like pictures of real people, and at least some of them are pretty racist. Yeah.
They're pretty bad. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, on first glance, it's like, oh, how could Dr. Seuss be racist? But like, if you actually take the time to look into it, you know, you can prove yourself wrong. So I think, you know, people need to be willing to be wrong more, and like to question their assumptions more often. So like, and especially like Al Gore says it's an inconvenient truth, right? Like who wants to believe that driving your car or boat or whatever is damaging the world? But like, them's the facts.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair, man.
So one final, I guess this would be a good wrap-up question I wanted to ask is, you know, everybody knows, I mean, most people at least agree that like burning fossil fuels pollutes the environment, but you know, at the same time, it's a serious part of our lifestyle. Nobody wants to be like, well, I'm not going to drive a car even though everybody else is driving. I'm not going to travel on an airplane because I don't want to pollute the environment, right? So that's like one hand, like everybody knows fossil fuels are bad, but nobody really wants to stop using them. The other part is everybody knows like throwing garbage in the ocean is bad and stuff like that. So like most people, I think, are not going around and like throwing garbage into ecosystems, but you know, they'll probably throw away a lot of garbage in their trash can and not really recycle. So how do you think like ecologists, people studying ecology, can make suggestions to actually improve on how people interact with the environment? Because I feel like we're kind of at this place where a lot of people know like we're living harmful lifestyles, but we don't want to change. We don't know how to change. Like, is there ways that more research, more science-based, can we have more science-based suggestions to get people to really change their behavior?
This is definitely something I've thought about endlessly, but I think where the problem comes in is that, you know, scientists are very, I don't want to say exclusionary, but they're almost viewed as like a class, like a separate class, I guess.
The ivory tower. right?
Sure,
They sit in
yeah.
their university and they just like write papers for each other and stuff.
Yeah, which I mean, at first doesn't sound that bad as long as, they're respected, but I think there's been such a lack of science communication
Mhm.
between just communication between, the scientific populace and the general populace. Like,
Sure.
and I think where that comes from is there's so many scientists, who get into their field because they're super passionate about their work. Like most of the professors you meet when they talk about their research, they're like eyes light up, like they're going to be pretty
Mhm.
stoked to tell you about it most of the time. Um, but then, that's kind of where it ends.
Mm.
Because the scientists, they see their job as, do the experiment, get the results, whatever, do
Right.
the observations, make the inferences or whatever it is you're doing. But I think a big part of the job, which is getting neglected, is being able to, yeah, pass that information along.
To educate.
There, yeah, and always the most interesting person. Like I've been to a decent amount of, just random scientific conferences, mostly environmental science based, but there is sometimes people there who uh, will do a talk on this or like try to like push this
Mhm.
idea of trying to, spark that conversation more between the, science community and the population of, the general population. So
Mhm.
um, I remember like one like that stuck out to me was really interesting. They like had us use this program um, that they had developed where it was really simple. You had to retype your abstract for whatever you were bringing to that
Mhm.
conference, um, using only the like I think it was 2,000 most common words in the English language.
Can't be
Um,
done.
Dude, fucking impossible. It was so hard because you would any word you type in that wasn't in that, it would automatically erase it once you press the space bar.
Right.
Um, so you're just like
Wow.
constantly like trying like 100 different words to put
Yeah.
in because and then eventually if like a lot of times people would like give up a couple sentences in, but like a few people
Right.
who like finish it out, like it still sounded like pretty good. Like it still
Oh
conveyed the
yeah.
information that you wanted it to convey.
Mm.
Maybe not in the depth that like another scientist would like, but like
Right.
just somebody reading a newspaper could easily understand. And
And
I thought that was so great. I think if there's
yeah.
more stuff like that happening with the
Oh,
general population, that could eventually hopefully get reflected in the government, but that's going to be a long process.
right. And I think science education really is a career in itself, right? It's like
Yeah.
that process, and it really what it kind of boils down to is taking a highly specialized vocabulary and translating it into more commonplace terms that like your audience knows. So as you know, working with
Mm.
kids have a much smaller vocabulary than adults. So we have to figure out ways to put these adult concepts into basic words for the kids, and that's a real skill set. And like but also
Yeah.
doing science writing for adults depending on who your audience is. And like there are some people who are really good at this, and then I think there's a lot of people who aren't. I read so many articles on science in newspapers or like on the daily local news that just make me like want to yell at the TV because of the way it's being reported
Yeah.
inaccurately. It's
Yeah.
not that it's too simple. It's that it's not accurate. It's that they'll say imply that a correlation implies a causation, or that
Right. There was a
something.
misunderstanding. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically what it usually boils down to, and in my discipline of neuroscience, this is rampant of people taking a study that suggests something might be the case and reporting it as, oh yeah, this is definitely the case.
Mhm.
That happens all the time in like news media. So I
Yeah.
think part of the problem is like just straight up inaccurate reporting of science and people doing science reporting who really don't know science. So I think, the work that you do
Yeah.
is really actually, I mean, even though you think you might want to move into a more research thing, the work that you do of like having a real science background and working in science education is real important. And also in
Yeah.
science writing and science journalism, we really need people who actually know what they're talking about, and
I
who have the
know.
skill set to like translate that into common parlance. So
I know. I feel like so many people who get into science just have that natural curiosity, though, and then once they start on like a personal project or something like
for
that, it
sure.
takes them off. Like nobody takes into account that communication side, or at least not enough people do.
Well, plus if you're a professional scientist, like at the end of the day, you're kind of tired from like your all your time and energy is focused with your
Yeah,
research and scientific writing. That to do like
exactly. I mean,
popular science is a lot. It's a lot, yeah.
well, and then a lot of times too, like you do run into the guys who just couldn't give two shits, like just who want to just like put out their papers and be done with it. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
I've run into guys like that as well. Like
There's definitely some people who seem like their work is just in a silo. It's just their work and they don't really care about its impact. It's essentially just how they pay the bills. They're like,
yeah, which I do see, like everybody needs some sort of compartmentalizing, their
true.
their work day versus their home life. But like yeah, I think when it's something as important as explaining why the planet's on fire,
Mm.
like we should probably do that more often.
I mean, one person who's really tackled that challenge gung ho is David Attenborough, right? Who
Hmm.
used to do all these nature documentaries, but in recent years, it's like he'll only do a nature documentary if it's geared toward conservation in some sense. Like Our
Yeah,
Planet was his most recent one, where it's all about, it's like, oh, look at this cool nature. We need to save it because it's going
yeah,
extinct, right? And
they
then
always
he,
had the but look what humans are doing to it.
right.
Yeah.
And it got more so because when they first started with Planet Earth, it was not that much, but then Blue Planet was a little bit more conservationist, and then Our Planet
Hmm.
was like really very much so. And then his recent book, and I think also a series, A Life on Our Planet, where it's like him telling his life, but even
Yeah.
he won't even like tell his life story without a conservation bent to it.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know.
It's everything at this point. I mean,
I feel like that's great, and like he's really getting it out to the public. But I also
mhm.
feel like we need to reach the governments on this because the governments are the ones who really have the power to change things. Like I said earlier, like most people, they really can't give up like driving, or they really can't like give up using like throwaway things. Like so
Right.
much of what we buy is
Well,
throwaway
the thing
plastics
is,
and
like,
stuff.
yeah, I mean, there's yeah, I guess like I don't know. Like my train of thought was going, you know, if there was like funding towards, finding alternatives to,
Hmm.
plastics or, green energy and stuff,
Yeah,
that would work out. But, where's the funding come from? The government. So, we
the
need it.
government.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
making
think
laws against companies that pollute
it,
a
it
lot.
it's almost like a negative, yeah, feedback loop where like it's gonna take some funding to generate the jobs that will attract the people that will potentially introduce these alternative products, or it's just gonna keep continuing
Well,
the
I
way it's
think the
been going.
government can also ban stuff. Like, I actually took a class on
Hmm.
economics and environmental policy, and I wrote my final paper on in Germany, they have laws about packaging, plastic, like single use plastic packaging. And the
Hmm.
companies that make that are responsible for cleaning it up. And like, if it's found in the regular trash, they get big fines. So these companies actually, because of that incentive, made their
See,
own
that's smart.
recycling. They made their own recycling program
Yeah.
where like they would have their own recycling receptacles for their own packaging because if it was found in the
That's
trash, they would get hit with a huge fine. So I
yeah.
think we need more stuff like that where like we're
It's
holding
brilliant.
companies responsible. All these companies that make single use throwaway materials, or even companies that make like cars or fossil fuel burning stuff. I
Hmm.
think those companies need to take more of the financial responsibility. It's so funny to me when all of these companies do like virtue signaling and like Starbucks and stuff are like, oh, like here, throw your cup in the recycling because we care about the environment. And it's like you don't care about the environment. Like you know how much waste Starbucks produces, and then
It's a
like you
marketing
try
scheme. Yeah.
You try to make the consumer feel guilty, but you're the one like selling me the coffee and in the single-use cup and all that. So
Right. It's just a band-aid. It doesn't actually, I don't know. It makes you look better for a second, and then if you think about it more than, a minute, you're gonna realize that it's just it's just an empty gesture.
yeah,
Just
man.
empty as your recyclable coffee cup, Dan.
Not recyclable. Starbucks cups are not
non
recyclable.
non-recyclable. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Starbucks in forever.
K cups are not recyclable either.
No. I've heard some funny stories about the inventor of K cups just regretting everything.
Really?
Yeah, he says he feels really bad about like how much waste they produce and wishes that he got out of the company a long time ago, but like the guy who invented it is like, yeah, really regretful of inventing it.
That's really interesting.
It's kind of funny. Yeah.
It's kind of funny, but also sad.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
what do you expect?
well, I feel like this is a good place to wrap it up. What do you think? Or do you have any closing comments that you'd like to?
Let's talk all night, man. I'll talk to you forever.
Really? All right.
No, I'm good. I think closing comments, if this is something that's geared to people who could be potentially interested in getting into environmental science, I say please do. Oh God, please do. Like we need as many environmental scientists as we can, and if you do, remember your communication skills, remember your audience, who you're talking to always. I mean, it's a constant battle with trying to match your audience to what you're saying. So can just be mindful of that kind of stuff. Keep an open mind. You never know who you're gonna meet, who will change your mind about stuff, and what sort of things out there may pique your interest that you couldn't imagine now. So just open mind, communication, and
Word.
Put in a little bit of work.
Little. All right. Well, thank you, Slater, for your time. We're gonna sign off. Sayonara.
Anytime. A lot of fun. Thanks for having me, DC.
Yeah. I'm not gonna end the meeting.